So welcome, Dr. Susan Fay. Um, I think of you as an energy worker. When people ask you what you do, how do you describe yourself?
It's really interesting of that whole thing. And we spoke a little bit before this about how the more I do this work, the less I am inclined to be able to use human words to really describe what it is that I do. So it's very difficult when people come up and they say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, whatever shows up. It's interesting. It's like there's so many things that you do in your life, and like how would you put that into a category and say, I am just this or I'm just that. In terms of the situation, it's like, who am I in this moment? And what do I need to communicate and how do I do it? So all of these kind of human terms always seem a bit restrictive in at times. And so it would kind of put you in a box and say, well, I only do this work. Well, sometimes I'm doing energy stuff, and sometimes I'm really accessing a lot of my psychological background and that type of information or neurological information. So sometimes I'm a scientist, sometimes I'm in the energy, and it's this kind of fusion of those two things. And can you kind of go back and forth? So if that makes sense, it's hard for me to describe what I do.
That makes a lot of sense to me, but then again, I know you a little bit, and I've also read your book, which is fabulous, Sacred Spaces. So if you like meet somebody that, let's say, a horse person that's never heard of you, how would you describe to them what you do, as in, like, what's your mission? I listened to a podcast of that you were in, and you were saying that I wrote it down. You said that my place is to learn enough about myself where I can model.
Okay.
And I think in your book you say that you want to help equestrians, with a different type of communication with their horses. But I also know you have a background, in training horses and stuff. So just in case
Right.
somebody has never heard of you before, how would you introduce your work and the difference that it makes in the world?
Oh, that's a big
I know
question. And
that now we have an hour's worth of stuff to talk about.
well, there we go. You'll watch me babble on for an hour here. I would say that when people ask me what I do, the biggest thing is that I would say I am present. I
Mm.
am present. That's what I do. I do presence. And when you do presence, there's very little else you need to do because it's such a rare commodity in our world now. And especially when it comes to our horses, very few horses have experienced people who are present. So, in that space of when they say, "What do you do?" It's like, well, first thing, I'm present. And then I can feel the energy field. I can have communication with this animal or this person on a very deep and intimate level without all that static or the bravado or things that we do when we're trying to be something, right? Or prove something. So when we're talking about personal growth and things like that, I always think of, well, that would be my foundation is to find that place of peace of mind and I'm present. And do I need to be anything more than that? I don't know.
Mm.
Then I go with the flow and what comes up. And again, it's like, what do I do? Well, I evaluate there from that place of presence. I can now feel what that other being is going through. And I ask for information from that animal, that person, whatever, and maybe in a silent way. I may ask them anything you need to show or tell me. I'm here, I can hear you. I'm listening. And then from there, it just evolves. What do I do after that? Well, it depends, right? It maybe they have some trauma. I may talk to them about that. So I step into a role of maybe a bit of a counselor for a horse or a therapist. But in terms of like, I'm not going to fix you, but I'm going to hear you. So I'm also a listener. So I'm present, I'm a listener. Um, and then in that space, I'm also a communicator. but maybe not always in the way that we think of communication in terms of words, but in terms of body feelings and sensations and overall impressions, you might say, that I'm getting. And all of those things that when I sit in that place of stillness and presence with a horse, then it guides me on what am I going to do? Who am I going to be in that space? And what needs to happen in that? So in terms of broader things of people wanting to nail me down, what do you do? It's like, well, I evaluate them for, what's going on psychologically, emotionally, energetically, neurologically, spiritually. And then from that information, then we start a conversation. So I would say more than anything else, I'm not doing anything but having conversations in all of those different realms
Mhm.
of the inner world that we have and that we could share with a horse or another being. So I gather information from the science part of my brain of like, ooh, I'm feeling this thing going on, or I see them struggling with this problem. Then I can access my information that I have on psychology or neurology or any of those other things, energy, and say, oh, there's a block here and this is what it is, and here's how I could help guide you through that. So when I think of that term, energy worker, it kind of implies that I'm doing something. And it's like, it's actually that I'm not doing anything other than
Mhm.
having a conversation.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting because I'm not a doer, I'm just a beer. I just am. Um,
That's really interesting because the last time that we talked, you weren't quite in that place yet, I think. Like, I can feel a difference in you. And I went back, of course, and read your book again before our talk. And one of the things that really struck me was the that you talk about that you're not necessarily adding things. You're just removing like blockages. So like I come from a place of believing that we're all pure positive energy and everything that isn't that love and pure positive energy is things that we've put on top. So is that a little bit like how you think or
yeah.
different?
It's interesting, and you said I like the fact that you said you're different than you were the last time I spoke to you. And I would think as we're going on any kind of spiritual journey, we wouldn't be the same as we have additional experiences. So my additional experience was sitting down and trying to put into words things
Mhm.
that I was going to put in a new book. And as I was contemplating that, I have to think deeper about what am I doing? Who am I? Where am I going? What am I trying to communicate? And so, in that deeper exploration of that quiet space, when you're writing something and you're trying to put it into words, I believe that you access some other deeper thought about, wow, what am I doing? Who am I? Where do I want to go? How do I want to communicate? And what do I want to leave for the world when I'm gone? All of those things come up, and I'm glad that you notice, like, I'm not the same person. And I always feel like, hopefully in a much better way, that I continually am trying to evolve and find that place of inner stillness and that peace of mind, and that this is what I'm here for, and this is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
Yes.
okay.
Personal, I mean, growth is like a journey, right? And
Right,
I think as horse people, we hear it all the time. Riding is like a lifelong journey, but I think sometimes we don't think of growing, especially as adults, like
right.
always evolving um, into something maybe bigger or something more present, something,
Hmm.
finding your center. So maybe just if somebody listening has not read your book, you want to take us on the journey? Like you come from a science background, but then you had this epiphany. I remember reading about the horse that got stuck in the cattle. Gabe, maybe that was your first experience, or like was that the thing that pushed you off to grow into this direction? Or maybe can you take us on that journey a little bit?
Sure. And this is a really interesting one because from the time I was a really young child, like my first memories were, I can see things that other, it's like it seemed very normal. So I didn't think of it as anything different. It's like I could look at a situation and read all the emotions in it, and I could see things, and I just assumed everybody did. And then as I kind of progressed through my life there, you realize that that makes people uncomfortable a lot
Yes.
of times, right? And so you start to suppress it, or you don't express anything. You just go with the flow. And my journey before was always about how do I fit in? And I think this is really normal for young people, especially. It's like, how do I fit into the group? And being different is not okay.
Right.
And
It's primal to fit into
right.
the herd.
Primal, exactly. And I thought, well, what are my strengths? And I thought, oh, science is a strength. And actually, I use science in a way to hide in that space and appear like I'm normal, because science is very highly esteemed in our world, right? If you're a scientist, oh, that's great. So you go, oh, well, I'm a scientist. So that keeps you in the real world, and it gives you some feedback, and people find it, when we're talking about what do you do, it's like, I'm a scientist. Oh, you're a scientist, so people can relate to that. You
Mhm.
can't say, well, I see things other people don't, and so yeah, and they're like, well, there's a special place we send those people. It's like, no, and especially for me, being a kind of quiet introverted kid, I did not want to make waves. It was scary. And the world had a lot of sensory information for me to process. And I'm like, no, I think if I just focus on science, I'm going to be okay. I can just stay in that space, and everything will work. And all the while though, when you have something, I always do the analogy of, when people say, well, just turn off the feelings that you get, or the intuitions you get, or the empathy, when you're feeling somebody else's emotions, just shut those off. It's like, I always say, well, why don't you keep your eyes open but don't see? That's
That's it.
impossible. It's
Mm.
utterly impossible. So how do you learn to live with it? And, mine was by kind of immersing in the science. Science can be a very good pacifier, and uh, it gives you a feeling of safety because there's certainty in it. And so, all of that time, I'm in that place of the science, and going down that route. But then in my inner self, when you're not congruent and not truthful with yourself, you feel it at some level. Some level, and it bothers you. And I thought, I don't think I can do this science for the rest of my life, to the degree I was doing it in the environmental field. And I'm like, I'm not happy here. Why am I not happy? Because I'm not living what my soul desires. Why I came here. I'm doing something good. I was saving the environment, at least in my own mind, right?
Mhm.
But I wasn't saving myself, and I wasn't being true. And I was hiding the aspects of myself that were really important. So that was the thing, came to mind. And when I had a chance to go off and live on the ranch and live the dream of having horses and raising them and doing all of that, it was also another place to hide because it was very comfortable for me as an introvert. So I could hide on the ranch, and I could actually do my intuitive stuff and nobody would know. I mean, except for the horses. And I recall my ex-husband telling me when we moved to the ranch and he was working as a physician in the small town, he said, whatever you do not let people know what you do. Meaning, don't do any of your intuitive stuff. Be normal.
Be normal. That's a
Be
good
normal,
one.
right? And so if I were, it was like I was living these dual lives. Like I'm my intuitive self and feeling all of that wonderful, like, oh, expression of all of that on the ranch. And then I'm with other people and I have to be good girl. and normal and fit in. And, there were parts of that that didn't feel good either.
No, I
I was
imagine that didn't feel good at all.
No. And then you're afraid. It's like I lived in that place of fear. Oh, what if I make him look bad? What if so it was always about somebody else and kind of stifling my gifts or whatever because of how uncomfortable it might make somebody else feel or what making waves or something like that. So I would say I was a chicken back then. I didn't have courage enough to say, here's what I do. So I hid it, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that time with the in the book when I wrote the story about the horse being caught in the cattle guard and that's what I do. I remember even from that experience and when the people came back and they saw the horse outside the cattle guard, that the look of shock and fear on their faces told me you shouldn't be doing that stuff.
Like you were a witch or something.
Right. And it's so far from that. It's so far from that. But that was pretty much the catalyst when that happened. And then not too long after that, I was divorced and kind of floundering. It's like, what do I do? Do I go back and be a scientist again? That
Mhm.
feels comfortable,
Familiar.
familiar.
Hmm.
But I also understood that experience changed me so much that I go, well, I have to know more about that. Why does that happen for some people and not for other people?
Hmm.
Can it happen for everybody? And so that was my jump into the world of psychology because I thought that might be the closest thing. I would say I was too chicken to go to a school that just did energy psychology or something like that. But I was like, well, I can understand the brain in terms of a scientist, and I bet you there's some information there that's going to really speak to how do we do these other things.
Hmm.
And so, going through that, I'm gathering that information. So I'm not realizing that on that journey, I'm working on this fusion between my right brain perspective and my left brain perspective. I'm saying as a scientist, I've had experiences. I know these things exist. And science is saying, no, they don't. And I'm saying, but there's got to be something in the science that says, yes, they do. So I'm on that exploration uh, into the science of
Hmm.
all of this. And as a result, I'm not going into what people think when you say I'm a psychologist. They think, oh, you're here to analyze me and figure out what's wrong with me. No, the at the time I think they still call it positive psychology, which I don't really like that term, but it's in that realm of positive psychology. I was in that in health psychology were kind of my areas I was working within. And I'm like, oh, within that branch of psychology, we're looking at what makes people thrive, what makes people different, what makes people resilient, all of these things like that. And for me, that seemed more in alignment with what I was going to be doing with the horses,
Hmm. Makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
So that's why I kind of did that little diversion over here, which I was really glad because in that space of I was now in psychology, but I could do both things. I could do the science part and I could do that other intuitive part and see that they're both two really valid ways of looking at the world. But in and of themselves, they're inadequate. Science is inadequate without intuition. Intuition is informed by science and expands through that. So I'm like, oh, this is great. We can do this fusion. Hence the name of the subtitle of my book was Communion with the Horse Through Science and Spirit.
Hmm.
Right? So understanding that we are both of these things.
Well, yeah, because science is really just the biology of, in a way, of how we work. And obviously, we're in these bodies, so you can't take the spiritual part out of
Right.
we are in these human bodies. So then, so then you were in that space. Then what was? the next thing that you did, like, did you have another experience that kind of pushed you, or did you start exploring that more within you and your horses, or were you already working with people? Like, I imagine that in the beginning, maybe when you were working with people and their horses, you did kind of the intuitive thing, but it sounds like now you also teach other people or riders to have more of that. So that must have been like a kind of a progression there.
Absolutely a progression. And I believe, when I first came out of school and was going, I really found that people were not open to the spiritual end of it. So I still did that work, but I explained it all through science. It's like and I kept it kind of in that realm, and I kept thinking, oh, every time I say something that's more intuitive based, and we're talking many years ago, that people would kind of freak out again. It's like, oh
Things
no.
have changed quite a bit in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think until 2020, when, my book came out in 2019, and I thought, oh, it was pushing the boundaries of this
Mhm.
kind of thought. And, I thought, well, I'll just put it out there and go do my whatever sciencey more thing, just so I can make some money. Um, but yeah, it was almost like COVID and all the things that happened opened up people to exploring many different things. And so I saw that it started to open people's mind to the other aspects that I never like the word woo because it feels very derogatory, but I I feel like people started to go, well, there is something called intuition, and we're having a lot of people say, oh, I had these experiences, but I couldn't really tell somebody about them. And so it's my progression as I've been going along, it's like introducing more and more of that intuitive side of it and trying to say, let's explore that as much as we do the science part. And there's much to be learned over there in the intuition. Uh,
Into it.
yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure not to use the word woo. So
It's
did
okay.
you do any kind of like formal education? Like, I think I mentioned last time we talked, I have a friend who always says that woo woo is only woo woo until it's what you do. But
Right.
he actually went to, a spiritual school. So did you ever then, do that as well, or did you kind of self-develop how
Here,
you do that?
I would say both.
Okay.
So I I have studied spirituality in those more formal ways since I was 12 years old. I was very interested in um, how the brain works, intuition,
Mhm.
all of the things that kind of fit under the maybe you call paranormal or unexplained things. So I was always going in that, and I probably have like 5 different certifications in different energy healing modalities.
Okay.
So I really went and delved into what are people doing with the energy? How are they working within that framework? Because I think it's very important as a scientist to understand where are people coming from? What are they doing?
Mhm.
And one of the things, I became a Reiki master and I did these, like I said, these other healing modalities. But what I was experiencing as I studied those and compared them to how I learned energy from horses, the environment, and being in those quiet spaces, those two were really different. The difference that I saw between the human perspective or human-centric perspective of energy and this more nature-centered perspective of energy was in
Mhm.
the simplicity. In the complexity over here in the human end, they make things complex. They make working with energy very systematic, very complex. And I always found like, oh, you have these lists and you have to follow this system and you have to do these symbols or you have to do all these things. And it's like, well, that just seems like so much work. And over here, and I'm living with horses, and it's like there's this big difference here, and I'm going to write about this in my book. There's a very big difference between the human-centric and the animal-centric or environment-centric view of energy. Over
That's so
here,
interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it quite like that. That's
right,
really neat. Yeah, that makes so much, like I can feel
yeah,
the truth of that. Yeah.
right. So you think about over here with the humans, we, like humans do, we see energy and we go, oh, we're going to control that energy. We're going to control it, manipulate
Yes,
it.
we're going to use it for a purpose.
We're going to use it for a purpose. So we do
Mhm.
energy, right? We are energy workers. That's why I'm really hesitant to use that
Yes,
word now,
yes,
because I'm like,
good point.
it's all about this doing part of like, I'm going to control the energy, use it for my purposes or to fix something else. Whereas over here in this other place where I was with the horses,
Mhm.
they understand that they are energy. There's nothing to control. They are energy. So all we have to know is how do we fit within that energy field? What is
Mhm.
our part within that field and how do we interact with it? But not try to control it, but try to become one with it. And so you can see how there would be a lot of conflict and there. That's why I have a lot of people say, well, you're not really an energy person because you don't use the correct terms or you don't. It's like because I don't have to, because that's not my perspective. Because my perspective is that I am energy and I just have to know how to work within that field as an energy being. I don't need to control it. I just need to know how it works and be part of it. And this is where I think people struggle with a lot of my work is they say it's too simplistic. No, this is think about horses. Do they need rituals? Do they go out and do drumming ceremonies or rituals or use crystals or no, they don't. Are they masters of energy? Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're the masters of being present.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And over here on the human centric, we're all busy and doing all this stuff, which to me, when I look over at a lot of the human stuff, it's like it works, of course, but it's just so busy.
It takes a lot of effort
It
to
does.
relax, so to speak,
Right.
or
So
to feel happy, I guess.
yeah, I'm always going, okay, this is why people aren't understanding sometimes what I do, because
Mhm.
it seems too simple. And for me, it's like the more complicated you make it, the less likely your horse is going to understand it. 'Cause-
So, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, explain a little bit more. I mean, in my limited understanding of it, like energy is the same,
Mhm.
but horses live in this world where we are, always so like not necessarily connected to energy. And even when we bring energy, sometimes it's very intense for a purpose to get what we want, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Do you find that like horses immediately connect with you? Some have a little like boundary up. Like, how do you compare, how horses kind of try to fit into our world where we like don't go there
Yeah.
a lot of times?
Yeah. Uh, this is a very interesting concept because the more I'm in this and like understanding that I am energy and having awareness of what energy I'm bringing into a space and what I'm communicating energetically, there is instantaneous connection with horses.
Mm.
And as we talked about my breathing course, it's kind of one of those steps toward that instantaneous connection with them.
Mhm.
It's because I'm good. I walk people through. Here's two main things that a horse needs is to feel safe and to feel trusted or
Mhm.
trust that you're trusted.
Don't we all need that in a way? I
Yes,
mean,
it's the foundation for everything, right?
yeah.
So, and we can communicate that energetically through the way we breathe. And so that's why I developed that course. It's like, again, people say, oh, that's too simplistic. No, you start doing that and
Clearly,
animals
you felt
stop.
your positive energy. Do you
Yeah,
want not to interrupt there, but do you want to just talk a little bit about that course? Because you know, maybe people don't know about it, and you could just explain it a little bit.
yeah. Um, I over the years was kind of doing the breathing this way, but again, until you go and explore it in depth, you don't really think about some of the things you just do naturally. So, as I said, I studied health psychology, and so there's a lot of aspects to the breathing. And if you go into health psychology, and it's like, until I really thought about it, and this was after I wrote the book, I really started sitting down and going, what am I doing with the breathing? Not those things I wrote about. I'm breathing different than what I talked about in the book.
Okay.
Okay. And so I started putting on the science mind again and saying, what is different about my breathing? Why would that work? And why would it create this instantaneous trust and safety feeling for a horse? And as I'm looking at these things and I'm going, oh, then you breathe this way, and then you know, it communicates energetically. So I'm looking at all these different aspects, and then kind of looking at going out and saying, let me experiment with intention on how I'm breathing
Mhm.
and watch the different reactions from the horse. And I'm going, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that over there. And a part of science is, can you replicate the outcomes? Oh,
Mhm.
well, I went over here and that worked. And I went over to this horse, that worked. It worked over here. It didn't work with this horse. Why didn't it work with that horse? Oh, that horse has lots of trauma. It can't hear me through the trauma.
Mhm.
So, I'm parsing out like why is this working over here, not here, and so I'm gathering that information, but um, I'm also realizing that the horses with trauma, if I spent time breathing with them in this particular way that I teach, that they would begin to release their trauma on their own.
Mhm. It's powerful.
Yeah. And so there's that place of being present and having healing happen around you because of that. Not
Mhm.
because you're doing something, but because you are doing nothing, if that makes any sense. Not to a lot of people, but I'm seeing this over and over. So this breathing method, again, was before I wanted to put it out into a course, I wanted to be certain that it worked for me every time, and with those exceptions of if there's extreme trauma in that animal. And could I teach it to other people and would it work the same way with them that it did with me?
Mhm.
And so it was years of going, okay, I'm going to introduce this, let's see what happens. And as I'm
You're an experimenter, a
right,
scientist.
and that's part of that science part of my mind. It's like you're going to experiment before you just bust out there with it, make sure it's working.
Mhm.
Make sure you have the data on that. And so, yeah, that was kind of the genesis of this breathing. And I know I've been doing it pretty much my whole life because I was a swimmer and a musician, which is both things that are about lots of breath control and
Yes.
awareness, right? And I realized that also with this breath, that when I have awareness of it and I do this breathing method, that if I do have anxiety or something comes up and I'm startled, that I can re-regulate myself really quickly with just a breathing method that doesn't involve counting and other things. And I could take this breathing method also and use it every single day of every moment of my day, and that I can be more present, relaxed, and focused all the time.
That's kind of
And
the sacred space to be for us humans, isn't it?
exactly. And so it's kind of my when I thought about courses and it's like, oh, people are going to say, well, breathing, that I already do breathing. No, we don't do functional breathing with awareness and to what is the outcome we want from our breathing, both for ourselves and those around you. So that was really the focus when I did the breathing course. I'm like, well, it doesn't sound real cool and all that, but it really is the foundation for everything that I do. It is if you don't have the breathing down, when I get to talking about how we create certain energy frequencies, you're not going to be able to do that.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I understand from you know, biomechanical and anatomical aspect that of course the breathing affects your brain and affects your, you know, stress
Hmm.
centers and things like that. So I'm a believer in, yeah, you have to regulate your own state of peace first. So
Hmm. Right.
physiologically breathing does do that. And of course we kind of live in stressful times and people don't breathe right, even though that seems like a weird thing to say. So I have cat hair all over myself
Oh,
now since the cat came by. But yeah, that makes so much sense. Um, so it sounds like the breathing part has become, something that you teach in a course, but I also gather that, like we kind of touched on earlier, you don't just now like work on the horses with your energy or commune with them and help by you being present in that, but you also kind of teach the horse owner, per se,
mhm.
to be more connected like that. So is that something as you got more courageous or as you collected more evidence that it works or that you
Yeah,
were able to communicate that to people? Because it's a hard concept, and like I
right.
when I talk to people, they always say, oh, I can't do that, or like I
Mhm.
think there's a belief that only a few people are gifted with it and
Right,
the rest of us are too not, you know whatever to do that
right, right. And
energetically dense.
exactly. And it's so interesting because part of, my study when I was working on my PhD was like, what makes some people different? What makes some people able to do certain things? And I was looking at each specific thing. What makes that person different? How come they do that and somebody else can't? And I was putting together all that information. It's like, no, we can all do these things, but we just have to know what is that person that can do them? What are they doing that's different?
Okay.
That was my scientific question. What are they doing that's different than what everybody else is doing? And as kind of being able to see those other, maybe sometimes invisible things to most people, I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing. I feel that. So how could I explain that, and how could I teach somebody to do that thing? Because now I know what it is that that person has that's so elusive that makes them look like they've got this gift that nobody else does. It's like, oh, it's very obvious to me what they have as a scientist and as an intuitor. It's like, okay, we can replicate that. It may take some work. This is where people go, oh, well, it should happen instantaneously. No, it does take work. And those people that are dedicated to working on themselves and going on this journey, uh, find they can do this stuff. And they're always surprised. It's like I'll tell them, oh, and I'm feeling this or what, what, and they go, oh, I think I did too. I just ignored that. It's like, oh yeah, see, you just ignored it. That's the only problem. You ignored it. And now that's information and you can pay attention to that. And it helps them with feeling like, oh, I can do it. When you get acknowledgement, it's like, yes, you're not just crazy. That was not some random thing that you
Right.
just felt. You are feeling the same thing that I felt over here. And
Sometimes we need validation.
right, exactly. Um, and so yeah, that took me down that road of, yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's all worth it. I would not give up all this struggle and the research and the working on these things because of where I'm at now versus where I was before. Even though it was hard, it was a journey worth taking.
And it's still a journey, right? Because you're
Absolutely.
working on your next book, and we touched on this a little bit before we started this interview. So do you want to talk a little bit more about like what's pushing you now? Is there more that you want to put out there, or like a different depth of it? Sometimes we learn something and then there's layers to that, and
Right.
it kind of sounds like you're realizing more and more like you're getting to the bottom of the pond where it's just calm, present, and no need for all the modalities and stuff that a lot of
Mhm.
times we think we need
Right.
to get to that centered, whatever,
Yeah.
sacred space. I love that,
Yeah.
the title
And
of first.
yeah, I think with the impetus to write the other book was it always felt like Sacred Spaces, even when I wrote it, was fairly light. Sacred Spaces light. That
That's
it
awesome.
talked about in general things that were happening,
Mhm.
a very, very generic way that this is what I do. But when people come now and watch one of my gatherings or participate, they go, well, there's nothing from your book in what you do now. It's like, no, this
Oh.
is what sacred spaces looks like in practice. You
Mhm.
know, I couldn't really describe it then. And then, it's like, I don't think people would have been ready to hear what the depth of it looks like. I don't think they would have, as a whole, most people wouldn't have been ready. And it's like they now read the book and then they come and see another level of, oh my gosh, that's what it looks like. I had no idea. And so kind of when I'm thinking about writing that book, it's more depth that I want to put, more explanation into it, more, yeah, exploration is the word I want to use into some of those, maybe some of the same topics and some additional ones, but more depth of understanding. Why is this happening? What are some other things that are might be influencing it? And for example, I'm trying to put together another course, and I'm finding this challenging because there's so many nuances to this, and it's not systematic. And
That's really hard for people. I hate to
yeah,
interrupt you, but because I think, we as human beings like have this need for step by step
hmm
outline of how to do it. And it's challenging when you just say, feel it or don't feel it, or like if it's a, kind of flowy type of learning. We like to have like, okay, I do X, Y, and Z, and then that out.
right. And yeah, and you stated it exactly. It's like people keep saying, "Well, can't you just give me the formula for how you do this?" No, because there is no formula. And that's the difference between intuition and your scientific mind.
Mhm.
Okay, in your intuition, it understands the flow. And it understands that you draw on whatever you need to in the moment. And so, I think of the sacred spaces things that I teach now. Breathing is one of the principles, one of the skills that you need. And then I'll talk about, here are some other skills that you need as far as how do you create a specific energy frequency and how do you hold that and what does it do and all of those kind of things. And that feels like I could put it into kind of a little bit of a system. But then when it's in practice and you're with a horse, you don't fit the horse to the program. You fit the horse, you fit yourself, and you go with the flow. And kind of going back to what I was talking about, what do you do with horses? I be, and then we have a conversation, and then we go wherever we need to go. And from that space, I give people lots of principles and some techniques that they can use. And they have to decide in the moment which one of those things that you talked about would be appropriate. So you can see it's like if there was a schematic drawing of go here, which box next, and it would be like all over it would be like this. This is how I work. There's no clear answer. There's no wrong answer always. It's like you go, oh, let me see. I'm feeling this from the horse. Let me try this energy, or let me do this thing. And you go, oh, does it work? What other thing do I think I could try? So you're starting to gain your own intuition, which intuition is what have I done in the past that worked and what have I done in the past that didn't work? And somehow that gets put in your brain. And then what can I grab from other consciousness areas? But you're always like integrating and experimenting through all these things instead of going, well, I only have one system and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have those 5 steps and it has to fit into one of those. And I'm going to make it work no matter what. And the horse is like, no, I'm outside of those steps. I need something different. And if you only have a system, you got nothing. If you need to fit that horse into that box, something's going to go wrong. And so I'm always saying, go with the flow. And it's part of us, I think, reintegrating our right and left hemispheres of our brain and beginning to know that we don't just have one and we don't just have to choose one, that we somehow go back and forth between those two and use which is appropriate for the thing that we're doing.
Yes.
So, with that said, I just want to kind of interject for people that are interested in, because this is part of my brain study since I was 12. I was looking at how do our hemispheres of our brain work and what do we do? And, there's always that kind of right brain, left brain kind of thinking. And I kind of wrote about it in my book. And I thought even at that time, it's like, this is not exactly how I want to say this, but I'm not sure I have verbiage for what it really is. And I came across in my last few years this neuroscientist in, I think he's in Wales or somewhere like that. And he was a psychiatrist, a physician, a neuroscientist, and he came up with this theory about hemispheres of our brain and what do they do. And he goes, well, there's always been this idea that your left brain does everything analytical and that kind of speech and talk, and then your right brain does these other things like art and intuition and all that. He goes, no, each side of your brain, according to him, does all the same things, but in radically different ways. So they are like in conflict all the time. Your left brain is the one that needs the system and the lists and the certainty and the science and all that stuff and fitting everything into these neat systematic boxes. And then the right brain says, my perspective of the world is I see it as a whole and that I see how everything fits together. And it's always making these connections and different things. And so there's these very, very different perspectives in the world. And so most people find that conflict in themselves,
Mhm.
their science versus their intuition, and they choose one over the other and they dominate. And he says, even our society is going to more of that left brain dominance in our perspective. And so you see that in art. It's more like you think of new art and it's very
Linear.
angular and yeah. And then you look at, when we were in as societies in a more feeling right brain place and it's very artistic and everything's in its connection to the other pieces. And I'm seeing this in the horse world too. It's like, what have we done? We've made it left brain. Everything's a system.
We
Everything's step
put,
one, two,
yeah.
three, four, five, do this thing, fit it in
Everything
the
is
box.
linear.
And it left little room for how horses actually view the world, which is through that more intuitive space. So we're in conflict with our horses because of the way we're thinking and approaching our relationship, if you think about it.
I just read this book, and in this book they were talking about that highly intuitive people um, have more interaction between the two hemispheres of the brain. And I remember reading it and kind of reading over it, but now as you're talking about it, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
That opens up doors to a different way of being in the world.
Right. And what I'm saying, and I think this is Dr. Ian McGilchrist, and it's called The Divided Brain. You can find it on YouTube. It's just a documentary. And
Oh,
it's worth watching because it really gives you that perspective. And what I've always done and what you're talking about is the ability to work across hemispheres of your brain and gather what you need to from each side and each perspective. Because sometimes that left brain perspective is very helpful. Sometimes it's very
yeah.
harmful, you know,
Right, right, right. And is
right?
that part of what you teach people, or
Yeah,
riders, I should say, horse owners? Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Horse
And,
people.
and like I always think that if we're going to step in with the horse, instead of making it come to our left brain world, which is very tough on a horse,
Mhm.
it's like we could learn to step into their world and think and have a perspective from through their eyes. How do they view the world? How do they interact in the world? And that's still, when you think about that difference between when I was talking about the different perspectives of energies workers are in the left brain place. They're trying to do intuition from that left brain place, and they're making lists and putting systems in place and all this, and this other perspective over here is about going with the flow and being part of the whole.
Being with horses. Like
Right.
sometimes, even when people talk about using energy, it's a little bit like in order to get something from the horse, or to be more effective in making your horse do something,
Mm.
when really that's not at all the kind of energy that you're talking about.
No, no. And I think overall, just interject a really funny little anecdote here, a story. I went and somebody said, "Well, I'm having trouble getting my horse out of the pen that has these other horses in it, and this other one comes over and she always bites and she does all this stuff and she makes it hard. She bites the other horses or she bites the one I'm trying to take out, and it's all chaos. And what do I do about that?" I said,
Mhm.
"Did you ever ask her and tell her what her job was? Because clearly she thinks her job is to do that." So
Mhm.
I said, well, I walked over and I said to her horse, "Okay, your job is to keep the mules over here on that side and just keep them from coming over by the gate so that we can get out." And the horse went over there and put her body and just like blocked the mules, and then she walked out and she goes, "Wait a minute." I go, "Yeah, we make it too hard. Like, what do you want? You wanted that to happen. Go tell the horse." Don't make it more complicated. When you talk to the horse, you make an internal picture. They pick up on that and go, "Oh, well, thanks for telling me. That's my job." Yeah, okay, it's that easy. You
That's a
know,
great story. Yeah.
yeah, and it's so funny because that's the very last thing we would ever think to do is to go ask the horse to do a certain job, and it, not like in a bad way. It's like, okay, you thought your job it was like being like a border collie and
Mhm.
getting it. I always think about the ranch. I had these two dogs. One was a heeler and one was a border collie, so they have different perspective. They have different perspectives.
Yeah.
One pushes cattle, one herds them, and so they were always like the cows were in chaos, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, it's like being very specific and telling this animal, this is what I need. And when you do that, you make that internal representation, the picture, and you change your energy, and the horse goes, "Oh, why didn't you say so before?" Um,
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah. Anyway, that's
So I don't want to keep you too long, but I have a few more questions. And one of the things I really want to know is like, you are changing the world, right? Is that what you want to do? Or like, what's your mission is it to bring this back to the world, to make this more available to people, to make the communication with horses? Because a lot of your work involves the horse part. Like we can't take the horses and being with horses out of what your mission is, right? Like,
right.
no?
It's and so I would say, when we go and think, are we changing the world? I don't know if that's my purpose. I think my purpose is to change myself so that then I change the world.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah. And this is, I want to just finish with this last story, and just it's a very short one, and it
Mhm.
happened yesterday. And I coached somebody through an interaction. They were a lawyer, and they said, "Well, when I go to court, this happens, and I get upset, and then these people react in this way." And so we walked through a scenario. It's like, well, what could you change in yourself? Not changing those people, but what could you change in yourself in that scenario? So she goes, "Oh, well, I could do soft confidence when I go in." And I said, "Okay, can you hold soft confidence while you're going through this hearing? No matter what those people are saying, that other attorney or whatever is happening, that you could just hold that space of soft confidence and do that work and not react to the world around you, but just be in that space." And she goes, "Oh my God, it was so good. It was so different." And then she said, "Then I did a deposition with a client, and they were very adversarial at the beginning." And she said, "Well, then I just decided I would choose to be in an energy of peace of mind." And she just held that one. And she said, all of a sudden, the guy was like very cooperative. And he said, "Oh, I thought this was going to be worse than it was. It was actually very pleasant." All she did was change herself, and the world changes around you. Okay, so that takes off a lot of pressure. If I've got to make a change in this world, no, I've just got to be responsible for me. and make good choices on my energies and my attitude and my, what am I putting out there energetically? And then the world changes. Because the other thing seems too big, too hard. Yeah, I don't know that I could do that. And that's where maybe as I've been working with this, one of my questions that I ask horses, do you have your peace of mind attached? Do you have your peace of mind connected? And when I have people ask their horse that, I said, do you have peace of mind? No, most people don't. Most horses don't. And what is that? What is
Right.
peace of
What
mind?
is that? And also,
Right?
do you think, and I'm sorry to jump right back in there, but do you think horses are born with peace of mind? Like, do you think that we kind of like take that away from them in a way by the way that we are? And because when you want to change something, it means you don't necessarily like what's there before, right?
Right.
So if we're looking to change, then are we hoping for a world or interaction with horses where we allow them to be that way from the beginning and that we also are that way? And
Yeah.
can we, integrate that into everything that we do with horses?
Absolutely. And again, this, if people are interested, I talk them through. I have some questions I ask horses, but this peace of mind one is very, very impactful. And I find that most horses don't have it now as they're older, and most of the horses that I'm working with. But to your question, at some point they did. And so what I do is I take them back through a storytelling to a time they had peace of mind and let them reintegrate that. And as they're doing that, I model peace of mind in my own body so that they recognize what that is. And there's a very distinct difference in a horse when I hold peace of mind as my energy. And again, this is my responsibility. I've got to find peace of mind first, otherwise I can't model it, right?
Course, yeah, because
Right?
it's an energy exchange and a mirroring in a way. Like if you don't have it, obviously you can't.
Can't you
Yeah,
can't expect your horse to have it. How many people expect their horse to be quiet and still inside and they can't do it?
of
Right?
course, you got to
So
change
all of,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So all of this exploration is about we've got to find those things we expect our horse to be able to do. And I have practiced a lot of figuring out what are the things that would lead to peace of mind in my own world. I would trust myself and others. I could be still inside. I could be present. I could be relaxed. I could be grounded. You can see, like, as you start like going and saying, what are all the pieces of that are necessary to be in place for you to experience peace of mind? There's quite a list.
Yes, and to
Put
your
out,
point, different for everyone.
right.
Like no two people, you couldn't say, okay, these are the three things you need for peace of mind because it could be different for different people.
They're kind of different, but they're almost in a broad way, they're the same. Safety.
Mhm.
I know myself. I'm relaxed. I'm grounded. I'm still inside. My mind is slowed. I mean, so they're in a general sense, they're the same things for everybody and for the horses, I find.
Mm.
It's like those same, when I start listing all the things that are about peace of mind that I would think of, they're really for the horses too. Yeah, they go cross species here, really. And again, it's like this has been my practice for the last few years, I think, more so just lately, because I know I added that question in as one that I asked the horses, but
Mhm.
not, I guess, until the last maybe 6 months or so. I just kind of blew past that one a lot. And then I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I go, why did I put peace of mind, connect your peace of mind in when I was working with a horse? And I realized because that's a foundation for everything.
Mhm.
And so I've been, when I have to model it, I get to practice it. The more I practice it, the better I get at it. And I can call it up no matter what's happening.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and that's the only sanctuary place we have with things that are going on in the world is, can we find peace of mind within the chaos?
Mm, applicable right now for sure.
Right. And chaos is still going to happen.
Chaos is always going to happen. That's right. You
Do you
can't.
have do
Right.
you have a place to go? And I'm
Right.
not saying dissociate and leave your body or do, no, can you be completely present and radiate
Even
and
if you're in the
be
middle
of
of a
peace of mind?
storm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So,
So
so what is the title of your new book? Have you already decided?
I'm I'm not really sure. I'm wondering if it's something like Sacred Moments with Horses. I don't really know. It's funny because the title comes at the end of it, but
Mhm.
once you write it and you see what's all in there, you go, oh, well, this is what it has to be.
Awesome.
So,
And do you want to leave us with, I don't know if you have, and I didn't ask you before, so maybe this is, inappropriate, but do you have like a little breathing exercise or something that can just get people started on like having a peaceful moment that you can share with us?
um, what's interesting? If they would want to, I could put as an attachment. Are you do
So
you
I'm gonna link, and I'll get that all that information from you, and I'll link it underneath this video.
Okay.
I just thought maybe you could give us a thought, or something that people can take away and that they can apply right now after they watch this,
Okay. Oh,
even if it's an intention or just something little.
oh, let's do the gratitude. I like this, and I can also attach a meditation from my uh, breathing course in there. That's kind of a whole body meditation, and so
Awesome.
that could be a bonus thing for you guys. And it was one that I did live, so just be aware of that. But that would kind of give you an idea of how I would
Yeah.
walk you through the breathing. Let's play with just one thing, and I don't think we did this last time. Did we do the
Nope.
the gratitude?
No. Nope.
Okay. So this is a fun little exercise to do with horses, and I call it the phone call. Um,
Okay.
so everything that I do with people and horses has a certain thing that the person's going to work on and a certain thing that the horse is going to work on.
Okay.
So I combine the two, and this is the first one. It's a fairly simple exercise, but not always easy to execute. So, first thing that we have to do for this is that we've got to find this energy of gratitude. And what does it feel like in our body when we experience genuine gratitude, not just fake, that like most of the time we go around and say thank you to somebody, but we don't say it with our whole body
Mhm.
with intention. Okay, so your job is to first find, can I resurrect and embody real gratitude? Can I feel it in my body, throughout my whole body, gratitude? Okay, so the way I get people to that one is, think about a time you were grateful for something, and then just sit with it as a meditation. Just imagine you're in that. Did anything change internally? Do you feel something different inside when you're really in that space of gratitude? And like my gratitude feels kind of bubbly and effervescent, and it's mostly up here in the top part of my body. I may feel a physical sensation of just a smile or a relaxation in my face. Again, this, whatever you notice, okay, you're going to practice and see, like, okay, so if I said thank you, could I get that feeling for that time that I said thank you? Okay. So this is how we're going to answer the phone when our horse
Oh, okay.
answers. Okay. They
Yeah.
are going to, when they get this feeling, when we actually embody gratitude in that way, we're going to scientifically create a change in their physiology. We're going to have their brain release some endorphins and oxytocin. Endorphins, relaxation; oxytocin, connection. Hence the phone call, right? Okay,
Nice.
so that's our goal, is we want the horse to release those things. Okay,
Okay.
so, and I'm going to put a caveat here before I start, that this gratitude energy, don't go around doing it all the time,
Okay.
because otherwise the horse or other people get habituated and then it feels fake. And then it feels like, oh, okay, she loves everything I do, so I don't have to try very hard. No, we want to use this almost like I call it an energetic cookie. It's like a reward. Okay.
Okay.
So if you think of a physical reward gives you some dopamine and little
Yes.
whatever. Okay, this is going to give you a little bit of dopamine, but more oxytocin and more of the endorphins. Okay.
Cool.
So don't overuse it.
Okay.
Use it when it's appropriate, okay,
Okay.
as a reward, okay? And I say keep that energy as long as it takes you to say thank you. This is your practice. I
Okay.
say thank you, I embody it, I feel that. Cool. All right. So
Nice.
now we're going to bring the horse into the equation. The horse doesn't have many jobs to do with this one. It just has to stand there and react to the energy
Okay.
and intention. So we're going to work on an intention is like I would like to make a call to my horse and have them answer. And you want to have your horse kind of far away somewhere, maybe down the field or something. And you're just going to do like you would do a phone call. Oh, first thing I do is think about that person I'm going to call, and then I dial their number. So that's our intention. Our energetic intention is to call a very specific horse, the bay horse down there, and he's got a specific energetic number. I'm going to call it. And then I just put the intention, I'd like to talk to that horse. And then you're going to wait. And just like a regular phone, you can't just be dialing again because they didn't answer, right? You just
Okay.
are waiting. Ring, 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 ring. Your job while it's ringing is to just breathe slowly and just be present. Okay.
Nice.
And you're going to
Mhm.
just gently watch your horse, and then they flick an ear towards you and you're ready to answer the phone. Thank you.
That's awesome.
And then the horse, sometimes they're like, that was weird. And they go back to what they were doing, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so your job is don't need anything after that. So you're
Oh,
holding
okay.
your horses.
Right. Do it
Like,
without the neediness. All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Got
So
it.
you're
Thank
just over
you.
here going, could I just say I was just checking on you? Thank you. Do you know
Yeah.
how hard this
You
is?
know people very well.
Yes, it's so hard. This is not an easy exercise. And people give up on it because it's like, what didn't work? It didn't work. Like, because you lacked patience. That's why it didn't work.
Mm.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
just go back, do something for a little bit, then make another phone call. And you wait for the horse's ear to flick for you or and go, thank you again. And then I don't need anything. Thanks, just checking on you. And the horse is like now freaked out, like, that is not normal.
Uh-huh.
Um, but what I do, I just play with this exercise, and pretty soon the horse, because we've got oxytocin, endorphins, and a little dopamine for feeling good, right? They start coming to you when you make a phone call. And the way they come to you is not like, boom, I'm in your space. It's very soft. So I want the reaction to be thoughtful and soft when I make a phone call. So the horse eventually, when let's say I'm standing next and they start looking off somewhere and I just ring, ring. And the horse comes back and looks at me. I go, thank you. And he comes over and he lowers his head and gives just a little flexion and softens.
Nice.
That's the beauty of working with the body's own hormones, neurotransmitters. They can help you with the behavior. Okay.
That's
So all
beautiful.
of those things, the endorphins for relaxation, the dopamine to feel good, and the oxytocin to connect.
Mm.
Those are all in this very simple exercise.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
so lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Everybody's gonna have to go out and try that, and they're gonna love it.
I know it's so much fun, and yeah. And you're gonna realize like, oh, I do like sit there and expect the horse to do it, and then I did something wrong. And so you've got to go over there and just wrestle with your own self, right?
Yes, yeah, that's the thing, the wrestling with your own self, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Awesome.
okay.
Thank you so much for
Thank
chatting
you.
with us again. It's always so lovely to see you, and I'll get all the information for you so I can link your book and your breathing course and all that
All right.
underneath this video. Okay,
Okay.
great.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.